What is up, guys? MTG Tournament Grinder here, and for this week's episode of Modern, we've got myself still on Hardened Scales going up against Green-Black Elves. So I'm pretty sure that this is not a good matchup for me. There's a very selective, few opening hands that are good, and actually this happens to be one of them that's good in this matchup. I need Hardened Scales on turn 1, and I need Walking Ballista on turn 2 if I'm going to have a chance at controlling the elf player's early game. And that really is the key. If you can blow up their Heritage Druid before they have 3 elves to activate it with, or in this case the Llanowar Elves, then you're probably doing okay. If you can keep them from ever getting off the ground, then that's really where you want to be. So Blinkmoth, because I want it to not have Summoning Sickness as soon as possible, just in case. Yeah, and then shoot the Llanowar Elves for 1. I feel like typically you want to play your Manlands as early as possible, just so if you are so inclined to swing with them that you may. So Nettle Sentinel, I'm not sure if he has a Heritage Druid in hand, but Heritage Druid, double Nettle Sentinel, that is like the combo. Thankfully, I feel like I'm doing pretty okay. Hopefully, I play my 4th land next turn, and then activate the ability on Walking Ballista, and I don't put 1, but I would put 3 counters. So that would give me control of the board once again. As it is right now, I have a decent blocker, and if he plays a Heritage Druid, that's pretty much like the only 1-drop that I'm really afraid of. Okay, Archdruid. So, with Archdruid on the stack, would have been potentially a good time to use Walking Ballista before everything gets +1/+1. But I would rather not kill Walking Ballista because he is like my key to victory. So that's fine. It resolves even if it makes things harder to kill. Am I not going to activate Walking Ballista's ability? My goodness, it doesn't look like it. So in retrospect, I'm not sure how correct that really is. And if I was not mistaken, I have an Evolutionary Leap in hand and only 1 green source. Nothing else to do with my mana, except 1 of it to activate a Hangerback Walker, which I could have left up 1 mana and still played Evolutionary Leap. So I think I'm just being a little complacent here. It's possible that I'm playing at a sub-average level just now. But that's part of the game. And these type of mistakes are easier to notice in retrospect. But so tapping Archdruid, he controls 4 elves, so 4 mana. 2 of it to activate Nykthos, which makes 6. His devotion is currently 6. So with 8 mana, Heritage Druid, yikes. Use Heritage Druid, gotcha. So I found it really helpful to keep track of the mana in that way, because Elves it's an aggro deck, but it's a combo deck. And the result of this turn's comboing off is swinging with a 9/9 Trample. See, and here's the thing about this deck. When you have 2 Hardened Scales on the battlefield, it just gets absolutely insane. So this 9/9 seems pretty scary, but activating the Hangerback Walker's ability gives me not 1 or 2, but in fact 3 counters because double Hardened Scales. So now it's 9 power and toughness up against the 9/9. They trade off. I get 6 Thopters, which is nice, because Elves actually can play way more creatures on the ground than I'm able to play. So having some flyers is going to help me get the damage through. And then modular trigger off Arcbound Worker. It's not 3, but 2 more, 5. So maybe playing the worker was the right move. It certainly seemed like a bad use of resources when I cast it. In fact, it was, but my opponent's choice of line to pursue just happened to make playing the 1-drop 3/3 that turns into a 5/5 essentially when it dies. I made that the right play. Interesting. So I really should have played the Evolutionary Leap last turn. I could be like sacking a Thopter and finding something better off the top of my library. If I had 2 green sources, maybe I could understand holding it in hand. But I don't really play any instant speed tricks in my main board. So that really was just a misplay not to play the Evolutionary Leap last turn. So Elves is never to be underestimated. It may look like I'm doing quite well, but only leaving back the 1 blocker. I mean, we'll see. So 6 mana, 10 mana, and he's about to go to activate Uzuri. So with Uzuri on the stack, it looks like now is my chance to shoot stuff down before everything gets +6/+6, or even +3/+3. There is a Lord on the battlefield. Yep, so I'll have to shoot with potential attackers twice. Because that 2/2 Elvish Mystic is about to be an 8/8. Okay, so he regenerates it with Uzuri. Regenerates that one as well. And I still have 6 in the air and 2 counters on Ballista. So without activating Ballista's ability next turn after I untap, I'm still presenting lethal. And regenerating, part of that taps and removes his creatures from combat. So his double Uzuri pump isn't even going to be that impactful at this point. I mean, that's what happens if you're able to control the early game. So we'll hope it goes that well in games 2 and 3. But for now, let's go ahead and look at some sideboarding and see what I have available to me and what my opponent has available to him. Well, alright, as for my opponent's sideboard, he brought in 2 copies of Fracturing Gust. That is a 5-mana instant that says, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. You gain 2 life for each permanent destroyed this way. So, wow. Not only does it hit all my artifacts, which can be quite a lot depending on my hand and how I draw, but it also destroys enchantments, so it gets my Hardened Scales itself, which makes rebuilding from a board wipe that much harder. Yeah, board wipes are always good, but it's even better when the opponent has a really wide board to back it up. So what I mean by that is, like from blue-white control, they wipe my board, and it sucks, but I'm not like dead on the very next turn. From a deck like Elves, I could very easily die to a board wipe because they have so many creatures and the ability to kill me on the crackback. Another reason it's good is it makes 2 of my strongest strategies, that is the animation module grindy strategy and invest heavily in a hangerback walker so I can win with flyers. 2 of my best strategies against Elves, and it turns them both into terrible ideas. Let's say I do make 10 tokens with a hangerback walker. Fracturing Gust is pretty good against that. Also, if I manage to play the grindy game and make a bunch of servos, Fracturing Gust, still good there as well. So overall, I'd say this card is like A+ or even S tier against Hardened Scales. My opponent also brought in 2 copies of Natural State. That is a 1-mana instant that says, destroy target artifact or enchantment with converted mana cost 3 or less. So Natural State hits literally every non-land card in my deck, even the X value cards, because X is only equal to 1 or 2 while it's on the stack. Once it's on the battlefield, that card has a CMC of 0. So it's not quite as devastating as Fracturing Gust, not quite as devastating as a board wipe, but sometimes you don't need a board wipe to keep me from winning the game. You just need to be able to hit my Arcbound Ravager, or my Steel Overseer, or whichever card it is that I'm going to ride to victory. My opponent also brought in 2 copies of Reclamation Sage. So Reclamation Sage is a 3-mana elf shaman that says when it enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. This card is essentially a natural state, except because it's a creature, you can hit it off of a collected company and it gets pumped by all your lords and also Azuri. This creature's enter the battlefield effect is good enough to play whether or not it was an elf, but the fact that it's an elf as well pushes it over the edge, makes it absolutely insane. The final sideboarding choice done by my opponent was to bring in a single copy of Hornet Queen, so a pretty spicy bit of sideboard tech here. So Hornet Queen is a 7-mana creature. It costs 4 green for a 2/2 flying death touch that when it enters the battlefield, put 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch onto the battlefield. So this card is fantastic against other go wide strategies because the 4 1/1s with death touch really make life difficult for your opponent when he's trying to think about combat math. And also, there's a chance your opponent won't have flyers at all. It can help prevent board stalls in that way or help get you out of one. And spoiler alert, it ends up being pretty good in our match. So this is a cool card. I like seeing it out of the sideboard of elves. As for my own sideboarding plans, I don't really have a whole lot going on, and considering how bad of a matchup this seems, I might consider changing my sideboard a little bit to improve my elves matchup. But for now, the only card that I think is even halfway relevant is 2 copies of Heroic Intervention, and that is a 2-mana instant that says permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So one situation where this card might help is when my opponent swings wide with his entire board of elves, I can make what would otherwise be bad blocks, cast Heroic Intervention, and then all my creatures live, potentially enabling me to swing back on the next turn. Best case scenario, even winning the game on the crackback. Also, having played this matchup before, I know my opponent has access to Fracturing Gust, so giving all of my permanents indestructible, not just artifacts but permanents, that would save my artifacts and my hardened scales. And that would be quite nice. So, in the interest of improving my sideboard, what cards do you think I should bring in to help me be more prepared for elves? You should let me know in the comments below. But for now, that wraps up the sideboarding, and let's go ahead and jump back into Game 2 and see how it goes. And we are back with Game 2. So I only really won the first game based off the merit of my opening hand. And this opening hand is 3 2-drops, a land. Okay, at least I scryed my second land to the top so I don't have to take as much damage from the Horizon Canopy. But my opponent has led with the Llanowar Elves. That can mean a lot of things. That's essentially a part of his best possible start. But, ouch. Double sideboard card, Heroic Intervention to the bottom. So that hurts. And at least I scryed that land to the top. Otherwise I would have been forced to take one of those lands off the Ancient Stirring. But I got the Ravager, so I mean Ravager is a good card. Interesting, he swings with the Llanowar Elves. So his hand is not as busted as it otherwise could have been. Well, okay, yeah, just a lot of dorks. So he's getting set up for some big plays, maybe? Perhaps he's got a collected company in hand. Meanwhile, I mean, I guess that's why I'm playtesting Metallic Mimic. I feel like if I've just got 2 mana and a handful of 2-drops, playing the Mimic first is correct. That way the rest of my artifacts, the rest of my constructs come into play with an additional counter. Gross. Lead the Stampede is such a good card. Interesting. Well, he saw another collected company and I lead the Stampede. So those 2 go on the bottom. That kind of stings a little bit. But as far as the 3 creatures, he got some good ones. Heritage Druid is in there, and that's really a part of how he really combos off hard. Yeah, I'm wondering what exactly is to play. Play Heritage Druid, play Nettle Sentinel, but then he doesn't have 3 untapped elves. I'm not sure. I've never actually tried to play elves outside of Pauper. Oh, okay. So he controls 3 creatures, makes 3 mana, plays 3 1-drops. Yeah, man. Followed up by a Lord. Elves is a good deck. Elves is seriously a good deck, especially when it has a good opener and it draws well. And that was only a 3 out of 5 on the lead to Stampede. That could easily have been a lot more devastating. So it looks like I'm counting out just how dead I am. They all have +1/+1 from the Lord, then I think he has like 13 damage, 14. Some huge amount. So taking the damage off the Horizon Canopy hurts, but I need to find something. I need to see just how dead am I. And I mean, Ballista is a good card. So because of the Metallic Mimic, it enters with an additional counter. And I think the line is, yeah, to shoot the Lord twice. That really, like, stops the bleeding, so to speak. I'm not dead in 2 turns. I'm dead in, like, 4, which is still bad, but... yeah, it looks like I ended up not attacking. Somehow, it doesn't feel right to attack on this board state. I mean, his only blocker at the time was a Nettle Sentinel, and Nettle Sentinel is a big part of what makes Heritage Druid so busted. But, so I mean, he probably just wouldn't have blocked. I mean, what kind of threat am I presenting? Oh my goodness, Shaman of the Pack for 5, 6, 7. So it's kind of interesting, actually. The damage per elf is almost, it's almost as though I didn't destroy the Lord. Because with the Lord on the battlefield, each guy would be doing 1 more damage. So, yep, concede is the line. So apparently, I just need to draw an opening hand, more like the one I had in the first game. So hopefully that happens, and I'll see you guys in Game 3. Alrighty, and we are back with Game 3, and I am still hoping for a really good hand, something like I had in Game 1. And I see double Forest, double Hardened Scales. Not sure what else yet, couldn't quite see, but that is a snap keep from myself. On my opponent's side, Unclaimed Territory naming Elves, and Llanowar Elves. He's nothing if not consistent. Or the Elf deck is nothing if not consistent, I should say. So it doesn't look like I have an Arcbound Worker, which would have been ideal. So out of all the 2-drops, I think Steel Overseer is best here. Because he doesn't ETB with counters, whether I have 1 or 2 copies of Hardened Scales on the battlefield doesn't really matter much. But by the time he is losing his Summoning Sickness and I can actually activate his ability, by then hopefully I will have played my 2nd copy of Hardened Scales and a Hangerback Walker for 3 instead of 1. But oh my gosh, meanwhile, on my opponent's side of the battlefield, he is comboing off hard on turn 2. Heritage Druid is so busted. Yeah, lead the Stampede. We'll see how it goes. Okay, 2 out of 5 is really not that bad, but sheesh, Hornet Queen. That is the spicy cyborg card that we were talking about. Makes 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. So... That sucks. So my plan of playing my Hangerback Walker, getting a lot of flyers, that's gonna be a little tough. Yikes! But actually, I think I needed to draw land there to have enough mana to do that. Because now I have to play a 2-drop just to make Metalcraft. So there is no playing Hardened Scales before playing a 2-drop this turn. Well, my draw was a 2nd mock, so at least... I mean, at least I was able to play out my hand, but without a 2nd copy of Hardened Scales. So I imagine that felt pretty bad on the day of recording. But that's okay. I mean, 1 copy of Hardened Scales and a Steel Overseer that I have yet to activate is a pretty good place to be. It looks like 3 mana with Heritage Druid, 4/5. Fracturing Gust. Wow. So my opponent is drawing all the good sideboard cards. That hits absolutely everything, including my Hardened Scales. I mean, silver lining, I get 5 Thopters. But my opponent destroyed 5 permanents, so he gains 10 life. Goes up to 30. I have my work cut out for me. I wouldn't say it's over. Clean cut and dry, like straight up over. But it is certainly not looking good. Wow. So now he has the double Nettle Sentinel Heritage Druid combo. He just taps those 3 creatures, makes 3 mana. Whatever spell he casts untaps 2 of the 3 creatures. So that's like the infinite combo essentially. Oh, you know, I didn't think about it until now, but actually last turn I was lamenting the fact that I couldn't play my Hardened Scales, my second copy of Hardened Scales. But it would have got blown up and just gained my opponent an extra 2 life if I had been able to play it. And my top deck being Animation Module, those are like my 2 kind of grindy possibility of bouncing back cards. So if my top decks are good to me, I mean, it's really optimistic thinking. Even to hope that I could top deck my way out of this. But I think if it's going to happen at all, it's with a Hardened Scales and Animation Module on the battlefield. Oh god. Elves making a bunch of mana. And Hornet Queen is going to make my life difficult. Honestly, I don't think I can possibly win at this point. It was going to be darn near impossible with all the elves on the ground, because his board is just so much wider than mine. He can just swing around me. But the 4 1/1s with Death Touch, and honestly just the 2/2 that is the Hornet Queen herself. Like the way my board state is looking, like a 2/2 in the air is kind of really good. Well, I'm not even sure what top deck I could hope to draw that could get me out of this, but it's certainly not a forest. So yeah, I think concede is the line. Well, I may not have won, but I still think that was a great match. I had a really strong hand in game 1, and my opponent got to show just how strong elves can be in games 2 and 3. So overall, a great match. I had a great time playing, and as usual, if you guys enjoyed watching, you can let me know in the comments below, or by hitting that subscribe button. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.